Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with another episode of Total Breakdown. We continue our series today with a battle between the Dwarfs of the Gobble King and the Empire forces of Mukip at the Central Chaos Wastes. The series is currently tied 1-1, and this one gives somebody the lead. We have a few more games to go. We begin, of course, with talk of composition and deployment, and as you can see, the Empire has come in with a rather interesting build over here. Let's start with the Dwarfs. So as you can see, a Rune Lord is in charge on foot, and up front we've got these 4 units of Dwarf Warriors forming the front line alongside these long beards in the center. Right behind that front line we've got Bugman's Rangers over here, we've got some Thunderers here, Ulthar's Raiders in the middle, some more Thunderers and some more Rangers capped on either flank by these long beards with great weapons and their armor-piercing, heavy-hitting capabilities. Up front we also have another unit of Rangers, I think hoping to come in from a more interesting angle, maybe fire into the sides or backs of swordsmen once the lines engage. And back here you can see, meanwhile, we've got a pair of cannons protected by a pair of slayers. So a little bit of artillery back here, but nothing compared to what the Empire's brought, already firing away. As you can see, we've got Boris Todbringer in charge up in the air, and we've got with him a Witch Hunter as well as a Jade Wizard, both on foot. The front line, if we can call it that, just consists of these 3 units of swordsmen, not even armor-piercing, not anti-infantry, they just have some shields, and then right behind them we've got a great cannon unit over here, another one over here, and then another pair over here. And then finally in the middle over here you can see we've got a steam tank as well, armor-piercing shots across the board here, and the steam tank in melee is also armor-piercing and anti-infantry. Then we've got some Thunderers as well back here, as you can see, waiting for the Dwarves to get close enough so they can start firing away in their, closer ranges. And off to the side over here you can see these Outriders waiting over the cusp of this little hill, trying to come around the bend and maybe shut down some artillery or shoot down some ranged units as well. So let's take a look at how this all breaks down. As you can see, the Great Cannon's already firing away, hoping to get some damage done, getting some stray shots, a couple beautiful shots as well. These Dwarf Warriors taking a huge hit over there, already dropping their health and morale a fair bit, their health primarily, losing about 7 or so individuals from that unit, and it's just been a handful of seconds in this battle. So as you can imagine, the Dwarfs are going to have a tough time as they try to close the gaps. You can see Ulthar's Raiders back here as well, taking a couple hits, slowly but surely moving forward though, as these Dwarf Warriors take a pummeling as well. Beautiful spread of fire over here, a lot of cannons, the steam tank as well, all able to fire away. And take a look at this beautiful hit over there into Ulthar's Raiders, wonderfully done here. And these Dwarfs, I think, just pulling off to the side, I think trying to provide, I should say, thinner lines so that shots are less likely to hit, but instead you can see the Thunderers back here taking a terrible beating, an absolutely terrible beating. In response, though, you can see as well, we've got Boris Todbringer moving forward, spotting these Rangers, diving in to get involved, while the Great Cannons over here are firing away, or rather the Cannons, I should say, are firing away at the Steam Tank back here, hoping to cause some damage to that very threatening unit that will cause trouble in melee as well. Meanwhile, Boris over here is forced back into the air as all of these Bugman's Rangers and Thunderers turn around and start firing away, but again, you can see we've got these shots coming in from the Great Cannons from the Empire here, causing a fair bit of hurt, especially to these Thunderers, trying to eliminate a ranged unit that can cause morale and health damage. And as that's happening back here, you can see we have these Outriders pushing in, advancing towards the cannons over here, firing away, trying to take care of the Dwarven artillery so they're not able to provide support. And in response, you can see these Slayers sort of positioning themselves, not really moving in to charge because they're not going to close the gap to these Outriders, but just closing in over here, making sure that these Outriders are not going to be willing to push in for a charge, because they will be quite effective in that situation, and then also slowing them down with the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and allowing these Rangers to turn around and open fire, potentially scare them off, if not finish them off. Meanwhile, back up front over here, you can see we have Boris Todbringer diving right back into these Rangers, hoping to get some damage done and eliminate this unit before it's able to do too much on its own. In response, though, we've got these Bugman's Rangers firing away, these Thunderers as well, moving in a little bit closer. We've got Ulthar's Raiders as well, moving in, hopefully trying to get, I think, marked by Ulthar down on Boris Todbringer to eliminate that leadership as quickly as possible. You can see that the cannon continues to deliver punishment to this clump over here. A lot of damage being done there, and you can see in comes marked by Ulthar firing away at Boris, and Boris pulls back and takes to the air, while back here you can see the steam tank does get assistance from Earthblood, trying to keep that steam tank alive, while here you can see we've got the Witch Hunter being hit by all of these shots from the Thunderers, just trying to eliminate the Witch Hunter. Again, coming in with accusation and things like that can cause a fair bit of damage, especially to things like Longbeards, without actually getting involved in melee, while you can see here as well these Dwarf Warriors taking some shots from the Witch Hunter as the Witch Hunter pulls back into safety. And here as well, Boris Todbringer circling around, trying to avoid some of these shots, trying to separate the front lines from the range support so that he can find a way to dive in, and there won't be range support when the front lines actually engage. And now you can see the handgunners getting involved as well, firing away at these Dwarf Warriors, dropping them rather easily, rather quickly as well. The Dwarf Warriors already down to about less than 50% health, and over here as well, these Dwarf Warriors eating a fair bit of damage, while this left flank over here is closing in towards the Great Cannon and towards these swordsmen. Back here, meanwhile, you can see these Outriders have actually been made to rout. Beautifully done there, keeping these Slayers over here to keep the Outriders at bay, turning these Rangers around, and then firing away at these Outriders, forcing them to fall back. They're at just below 50% health. A couple more volleys might actually make them relatively harmless in the grand scheme of things. Meanwhile, over here you can see Boris once again looking for an opportunity to dive in somewhere, but the range support that the Dwarves might have been relying on for later on have been separated from the front lines as these swordsmen push in to try and engage and intercept these Dwarf Warriors, these Longbeards, as well as these Slayers, but unfortunately the Slayers are able to find the gap over here. They move in right towards the Great Cannon, while over here you can see these handgunners continue to fire away at these Dwarf Warriors, hoping to drop them, slowly reducing their health by about 25%, but you can see these Longbeards are getting far too close for comfort. These handgunners decide to pull back into safety as the steam tank over here continues to get some assistance from Earthblood, and the Great Cannons, or rather the Dwarven Cannons, I should say, continue to fire away at the steam tank, hoping to cause some damage and finish that unit off before it's able to do anything in melee. Over here you can see the Great Cannon has given up on the fight as the Slayers close the gap, while over here these handgunners continue to fire away at these Longbeards over here again, dropping their health to about 50% before they're even able to get into melee. So beautifully done, while in the center here you can see these Dwarf Warriors giving up on the fight, a momentary engagement with the Swordsman, and now giving up on the fight completely, while the Witch Hunter, looking for another opportunity to get involved, firing away at these Dwarf Warriors, while the steam tank and the Great Cannon as well continue to fire into these Dwarf Warriors, hoping to free up this Great Cannon if possible so that it can get to work once more. Meanwhile, over here you can see Boris Tarbringer actually significantly shot down by all of these ranged units, having to pull back into safety, popping Foe Seeker to stay safe, as over here you can see this Great Cannon is very close to giving up, but we've got the Swordsman coming in for a nice rear charge into these Dwarf Warriors, hoping to scare them off alongside the fire from the steam tank. Beautifully done there, and you can see those Dwarf Warriors actually willing to give up on the fight, as off on the right flank over there we have the Longbeards giving up on the fight, wavering right now, but very close to giving up on the fight, while back here we actually have these Outriders rallying, willing to fight once more. But back to the front line, you can see we've got these Swordsmen giving up on the fight. They've been completely overwhelmed, overpowered, as these Dwarf Warriors just come in alongside these Slayers, alongside all of this range support as well. The Swordsmen don't really stand much of a chance. They were relying on some more work being done by gunpowder. Meanwhile, back here you can see the Great Cannon is forced to completely shatter, but these Dwarf Warriors as well have given up on the fight because of a beautiful rear charge from these Swordsmen. Great use of low-tier Swordsmen over here against the heavily armored, or even slightly armored Dwarf units wherever possible. You can see the steam tank once more, assisted by Earthblood, as these handgunners as well turn around and fire away at these Longbeards, hoping to finish them off before they're able to do too much damage to the handgunners. Boris Todringer back there as well, hoping to get involved, I think, against these Longbeards back there, hoping to shut them down once and for all, while up front over here you can see the Witch Hunter getting some shots off and also getting shot at, about to be hit by, marked by Ulthar there, reducing his, armor significantly, and he's going to take a significant beating as the Slayers come in as well, hoping to surround and finish that unit off, while back here you can see once again the Outriders, having rallied, are now pushing in towards the artillery, again hoping to shut it down, but we do have these Rangers back here to provide some support, while up front we have some rallying units for the Dwarfs as well, these Longbeards as well as these Dwarf Warriors willing to fight once more, as over here you can see these Bugman's Rangers firing away at the Witch Hunter, dropping his health to just below 50%, as over here, unfortunately for Ulthar's Raiders, they do get accused of foul heresies. They find themselves in a terrible position, being fired upon by all of these handgunners. They're dropping in health and morale significantly. Accusation isn't doing them any help either, of course. It does cause a fair bit of damage, and they do rout almost instantaneously. Very close to giving up as well, as these swordsmen are closing the gap. Ulthar's Raiders are probably better off actually routing and leaving, coming back to fight another day. While back here you can see, in my opinion, what is actually a bit of a misstep. As these Outriders come in close, they decide not to engage in melee against these cannons. They should have pushed right in and engaged in melee, probably shut down at least one cannon unit before the Slayers were able to close the gap. It would have been a Hail Mary, wouldn't have survived, but the Outriders aren't about to survive anyway. They got one volley into these cannons. The Rangers have turned around and are now firing away, and these Slayers are trying to close the gap as well. So it would have been much better off if these Outriders, in my opinion, had just dove in to this cannon over here, at least caused enough damage to maybe get them to rout in melee, maybe destroy one cannon, reduce their efficiency, and then have died anyway. It would have been, again, a Hail Mary there. They wouldn't have made it out, but they're not making it out anyway. A second volley comes through, and these Slayers are creeping very quickly, very close. Meanwhile, up front, you can see a lot of these Thunderers are very close to giving up on the fight. They'd already taken a fair pummeling from all of the great cannons and the steam tank as well. So when they arrived for battle, they weren't really healthy to begin with, but now they're able to fire into some of these swordsmen. Again, these swordsmen are facing the wrong way, so their shields aren't going to be worth anything as all of those shots come through from the Rangers and these Thunderers as well. Watch the swordsmen just melt away under all of that heavy fire from all of those bolts. We've got these handgunners as well trying to provide some support, firing away at these Slayers who are chasing after the Witch Hunter, hoping to finish the Witch Hunter off once and for all, while here you can see the swordsmen continue to melt away under all of that ranger fire, while back here you can see these handgunners get a nice set of shots off into these thunders, finishing them off, but we now have the dwarf warriors closing the gap, able to actually eliminate these handgunners as they get hit by the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin as well, making sure they're slowed down and probably forced to stick in place as these swordsmen continue to melt away under all of that heavy ranged fire. And Boris Todbringer over here, you can see popping Foe Seeker, I think, for the vigor resistance as he takes on some of these dwarf warriors, but he needs to be very careful as the Slayers are right here, turning around, diving into him, hoping to cut that bird down, hoping to cut him down. But again, he does have replenishment, so if he can pull back and take to the air, he can still replenish his health right up to that 50% mark right now, but for that, he needs to get away as these handgunners and swordsmen push in to provide some support. There he goes, he turns around, pulls back into safety. The Rune Lord, meanwhile, diving into these handgunners, holding them in place as all of the rangers continue to fire away, get some damage done as these swordsmen now try to pull in from the rear to shut down some of the range support, but we've got those long beards with great weapons there to shut them down instead. Meanwhile, back here, as you can see, we've got these outriders completely demolished, obliterated, giving up on the fight. They have to pull back, they're routing, and even if they come back, there's nothing they can do. Again, as I was saying, a melee charge over there may have done at least some more work than just sitting back and firing away from a distance. Meanwhile, you can see Boris Todbringer now the focus of attention of the Dwarven cannons and some range fire as well. A couple of these cannon shots getting some good thwacks in there. This poor bird is taking so much hurt, and Boris Todbringer is now down to about 25% health. He is not having a good time whatsoever. He's at his replenishment cap. There's not much he can do, and you can see over here these Slayers are under some crossfire from the Witch Hunter as well as these handgunners, but still chasing after the Witch Hunter, hoping to finish him off, but he's got just enough health to keep on top, I think. And you can see over here as well, we've got the Rune Lord sticking close to these handgunners, hoping to finish them off as quickly as possible, while the Great Cannon over here finally being shut down as we've got these Dwarf Warriors closing the gap and just cutting down this Great Cannon crew. Beautifully done there by the Great Cannon, but unfortunately it's time for them to finally die, I think, while Boris Todbringer over here pops Foe Seeker once more, hoping to, I think, close the gap somewhere, hoping to dodge all of these cannon shots that continue to fly through, whiz through the air, but he needs to get involved somewhere to shut something down, maybe keep the Great Cannon alive, maybe keep these handgunners alive, but all might be lost at this stage. The steam tank as well, pulling back into safety, might need to get involved in melee at some point, still has a fair bit of ammunition, turning around, hoping to get some shots in, hoping to avoid being obstructed, and I think shoot into the Longbeards over here, but you can see the handgunners are basically giving up on the fight. There it is. There's the route. Meanwhile, up front over here, you can see we've got these rangers firing away at some of these handgunners, while over here we've got the swordsmen trying to close the gap to all that range support. They do get hit by Mark by Ulthar, hoping to get maybe some focus fire on here, some volleys over here onto these shields of the swordsmen, diving in with Bugman's rangers as well, hoping to finish these swordsmen off once and for all, diving in with those headbutts. I love seeing those headbutts off the dwarves. And back here you can see the handgunners just not having a good time. They get hit by the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, causing a little bit of damage, and not like they're running away from anything, but that damage will tilt them from confidently firing away to wavering, very close to giving up on the fight. And over here as well, you can see the Jade Wizard finally in trouble, being closed down. A lot of shatters across the board. Steel, Faith, Gunpowder, all for naught. A Pyrrhic victory for the dwarves. A very interesting approach from the Empire here, coming in primarily with ranged units against a slow, lumbering target. A few mistakes here and there prevented the dwarf artillery from being shut down as early as possible, and that allowed them to maintain some damage output throughout the battle as front lines tried to close gaps. Fantastic attempts at keeping the steam tank alive, coupled with good target management, meant the dwarfs were having a really hard time. But once they managed to close the gaps and they were able to return fire with unbreakable slayers keeping units occupied, the Empire began to collapse despite a brilliant effort and a very cool idea. I really appreciate the thought put in there and the interesting approach, but the Gobble King, with his incessant dwarven chase, pushed in, managed to split, and managed to avoid damage wherever possible, managed to close those gaps and shut the Empire down. Perhaps they should have brought some more steel and faith and a little less gunpowder. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. As always, I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to highlight such amazing battles from the community. I'd also like to thank all of my patrons for supporting the channel every month. It makes a huge difference keeping us alive and running smoothly. And I'd like to thank you all for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield.